True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffindaffer. I am all garbed out today in Irish. Even have on, can you see green leggings? So anyway, happy St. Patty's Day to everyone. This is one of my husband's very favorite holidays, and usually I have my whole house decked out. I still have my Valentine's Day stuff up just because I've been so busy. But anyway, happy Valentine's Day happy St. Patty's Day to each of you. So today we are going to continue to talk about Nancy Guthrie and just a couple of things. Obviously, we don't have anything breaking. I wouldn't even consider this necessarily new, except for a new date mentioned. So I want to first get into possible dates. So a neighbor that Brian Inton interviewed specifically talked about January 11th. Now, we've known about January 11th for weeks now. We are on day 45 of Nancy being missing. She was reported missing again on February 1st after she did not show up to her little group that always watched church together after COVID. She no longer went to church, but she would go to this private home where they would watch church on television. So in any event, she didn't show up, and that was the initial reporting as far as we know, but we know there could have been a misspeech by Chief Nanos, who said far earlier than that, the night before, he said his officers on Saturday night were actually at the home. So I still can't figure that one out, whether it was just a major misspeak or whether there was any other calls earlier that evening. We just don't know. But I want to talk about January 11th and January 24th. So I talked about this before, that I think the moon in these situations are important because of the lighting that we're seeing in each of the cases. And I am going to put up really quick the video, which of course remains our best information. Now, isn't it interesting that when you look at this, it looks darker in the background than some of the photos we've seen? And I'm actually going to try to pull up another photo while we talk so you can see what I'm talking about. But basically, depending on the angle of the camera and depending on whether the Nest camera light was tripped or not, it seems to really be affecting that background. Now, I want to make it clear, though, that many people believe that there are separate days, according to a source that somehow gave that information, that these photos are actually from separate days. So not this photo. This photo, again, I wanted to shows this background as being dark. Several of the other photos, however, show the background as not being as dark. So I want to show that photo really quick. I'm going to get it up on stage so you can see. So this is a still, and you can see how it looks pretty dark. This is the photo of the individual who people are saying this was him sort of surveilling, and it's largely based on, well, it's not largely, it is based on source information, because Nanos said, no, that's conjecture, and we don't have timestamps, we don't have date stamps. So basically, Nanos is saying they don't know, and that anybody guessing at when these were taken just doesn't know, and they're just guessing. So I don't know. I want to show you, though, this important picture, because this is the other picture that people are saying, and this is him without the backpack. Yeah, I think it's this one. Let's put this one up. Yeah, you see, no backpack, no gun. So compare this and this. Oops, not me. This and this. So this is the night of the attack, dark. Night of the attack, dark. But we've seen others that show it a little bit lighter in that background, and I really think it might be the exposure. So I haven't bought in yet that this is 2 different days, but we do know that law enforcement asked neighbors about January 11th and January 24th. Those days would have had virtually no moonlight. Well, I shouldn't say that. When you're looking at a waning gibbous and when you're looking at I'm sorry, a waning crescent and a waxing crescent, right? All that means is, and I love astrology and I should say astronomy. I love all of that. But with the moon, it's just waxing means it's coming off of being the crescent, and waning is when it is, I'm sorry, waning coming off of being the crescent and waxing on the crescent. Nevertheless, it means that there's about 1 to 49% of moon exposure, moonlight. And for depending on where you live, that doesn't mean much because we have all these lights and everything. But if you don't live in a place, if you live in a place that has no light pollution allowed, it's amazing how much the moon makes a difference. So believe me, it's very critical, the lighting in the back being able to show whether this would have been the same day or not the same day. I think the issue is for us is that it's hard to tell from the exposures we're seeing. Now, I took everything straight, as I mentioned, from the FBI, from Kash Patel's website when he first, or not website, from his Twitter X when he first released all of this. All I did was screen grab. I didn't change it. I just screen grabbed everything. But what I'm noticing is that it really depends on, it seems, the angle, how close he was, the illumination of his flashlight. So I'm perplexed at what is going on. Somebody just asked, is there anything new? The only new information we have is that a neighbor now says the 23rd as well, I believe it was. Let me make sure I am not incorrect on that. Posted all about this. It was the Saturday before, excuse me, January 24th. So again, the moonlight on January 11th and January 24th going to be very similar, whereas the moonlight on the day of the abduction is very different. It's 100% full moon. But again, when I look at these, depending on what photo you choose from these photos, look at this. It's pretty similar. But the fact that you have law enforcement asking about these other days, January 11th, January 24th, what does that mean? When you have agents going to these houses, sitting down, asking not only for information from neighbors about that, but specifically about they want to look at your video footage that you might have, and they're willing to just sit there and they understand the urgency of going through it. I think it tells me that they are concerned that these could be other days that the individuals could have been, or individual could have been in the neighborhood. And so that's why they're doing it. They're looking to see if there's any vehicles, cars. Something has led them to the January 11th and January 24th dates. Perhaps it's something that they've pulled that has to do with geofencing. That's also something that nobody seems to be talking about, is the geofencing. And the reason for me that this is such a huge situation, meaning they don't have any clues as seemingly from the geofence. So are they looking at different days, geofencing different days around Nancy to see if there's any time frame that these individuals or individual could be there? All of that is extremely important for narrowing down the January 11th and January 24th. Or is it just based on another neighbor saying that there was something, a vehicle? Remember, they talked about that white van being in the neighborhood. So it might be something as small as that. It might be a geofencing situation. It might be another video that law enforcement has reviewed and noticed something peculiar. So they're asking other neighbors so they can take a look at that. I'm going to take a look at this chat really quick. Thank you, Karen. It says, let me get this off of here. I don't know why this is up on the screen. Sorry about that. There we go. If a tire, backpack, holster, etc., was purchased at a Walmart in Mexico, would Ellie even have access to that data? Great question, Karen, and I think I have the answer for you. So, Walmart, I did a lot of research on Walmart, down to how many shoppers there are a day, how many purchases occur a day, how many stores there are in Mexico. And you would not believe it. There are so many Walmarts in Mexico. It's huge. But yes, because at the end of the day, the parent company would have access to that most likely. When it comes to the actual information in terms from video cameras and things like that, I think that that would be more difficult for them to get. But as far as the actual purchase situation, I believe that the corporate conglomeration would be able to have access to that. I will double check on that, but that is my understanding that nevertheless, even though Walmarts and McDonald's, well, McDonald's are completely franchised, but that they fall under the umbrella corporately and it's something that could be purchased. Or, I mean, the purchases could be recorded with the parent. But I'm going to ask for sure. I'm going to get you that answer by tomorrow when we go on, because I think it's a good question. Again, we talked about, I just wanted to touch base one last time, maybe, because maybe these will solve it, about these, the billboards that are all over California, all over Texas, particularly located in Houston. For me, I had an epiphany. Maybe you guys have thought about this. Law enforcement hasn't said this. For me, I thought it was a real epiphany that I wanted to talk about. And that is, you have these signs going up, these billboards going up in very high concentration areas of Mexican Americans, Mexican immigrants, Hispanic immigrants. I mean, Houston, Texas, where they're concentrated at, other places in Texas, as well as California, some places in Arizona, which we haven't even heard about any being in Tucson. Look at the Bureau is not having these put up at these random places in these random states because there's nothing random about it. There's something in their investigation that has led them to that. You combine that, so the location of the billboards, you combine that with the look of this perpetrator, and I have some much better up close pictures shining in his face. When you look at those pictures, he appears to me to possibly be Spanish, and I judge that in large part by the grooming of the eyebrows. Again, I'm Spanish, and I'm in those cultures, and I could tell you many Hispanic, it's not like Irish or German or English. I mean, they do not mess with their eyebrows, but in the Hispanic culture, you can largely see this happen. Not everyone, but it often happens that they really meticulously groom their eyebrows. And that's what I see here when you combine the location, when you combine the look. I am just wondering if this could be, and then of course the proximity to Mexico where the crime was committed. I'm just wondering if we are not focused in on, or if law enforcement might have narrowed down to possibly being a Hispanic male. Nobody has ever said that. I want to make that clear. I'm just making a few deductions based on, again, the billboard placement, based on the proximity of Tucson to the Mexican border, based on the facial features. And let me pull some of these. Let me just pull the one really quickly that has the best vantage of these facial features. I know we've all seen this so often, but I really believe that this should be what solves the case. This should be what solves the case. And I am just convinced, for me, this has a Spanish style look. That's my opinion of it. I'm going to add one more picture because I want to talk really quickly about something Cece Moore recently said. And I thought this was just so good, and what some of us have been saying from the beginning. me just look here. Okay, let me pull this one up. Cece Moore went on with Natasha Suvez, and I talked about her yesterday. I just can't sing her praises enough. If you like an anchor that is really smart, uh, very beautiful. So she's certainly easy on the eyes, kind of like a Julie Grant, and very kind and so respectful of her guests, but yet asks lots of hard questions. She's really good, and she's on the evening. She handles the prime time for the weekend blocks. So the time of that during the weekday, you see Vargas on and you see Cuomo. She handles those big time spaces on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Anyway, she did just a great interview of Cece Moore. I featured it on Twitter, and I'm going to keep featuring some of these things that Cece said. But the biggest one she said, and I know Mac and I have been pointing this out since the get-go, this light. There would be so much saliva that would be dripping, and as the person would have to take it out of their mouth, that saliva would get on the gloves. Then the gloves would be transferred, for instance, to these weeds, which unfortunately, and I don't want to say they're weeds, to these vines, which I've also posted from what we see in videos that Savannah's actually posted. You can see that they've always been outside their house. I mean, they've owned that house since I believe it was 1975. You guys, I mean, nothing much has changed because she kept everything immaculately. Mac and I focused in, why in the world did they leave any of this behind? Because as he turns around to pull with all that saliva that would be in and around his mouth, you know, he pulls those weeds. You're going to get whatever is on those gloves, on those weeds, or not weeds, on those flowers, on those vines. I know a lot of people think that they're kind of a rosy. I've got them in another video where you can see them more up close, what they are. But nevertheless, it just makes no sense to me. Also, he's there likely drooling over this rug or the mat, which we know was not taken in the beginning, which is also just a crying shame. But Cece Moore basically said, and this is what I really wanted to hone in on. She said they need to go back and try to get even more DNA. She just really feels like the fact that at least what we've heard about is this one sample, one mixed sample with multiple profiles, which she said is going to be so difficult to separate. But that's what I wanted to talk about. The not trifecta, but the quadfecta as to what law enforcement may know about the ethnicity about this individual. So let me digress back here. So not only, let me get this picture back up because I like, not that picture, this picture. He looks Hispanic to me. We've got billboards going up into high concentration Mexican and South American pockets in this country. When you're talking about California and you're talking about Texas, and particularly those billboards are in and around Houston. And then also you're talking about Arizona, but seemingly outside Tucson, because I haven't heard nobody sent me pictures. I don't know about Tucson, the billboards being around the area, which I find very interesting because I can't imagine why they would not be, since many people in Tucson don't even know about this case, including the pizza delivery guy and many others, I can assure you. But this was the epiphany. I forgot to say the big epiphany moment. The big epiphany moment is the fact that even though they have not made a connection in terms of the particular person that did this crime or that's porch guy in the DNA, they haven't had that narrowed down. I guarantee they have narrowed down. I shouldn't say I guarantee. I think it is a very good chance from listening to what Cece Moore has to say that they would possibly know. And I want to ask her this question, whether male, female, and this is the big one, everyone, the heritage. I mean, that's why do you think 23andMe, you send $100 in and they'll tell you whether you're a Viking or an Eskimo or whatever. They do very little testing. I hate to disappoint everybody, but compared to what law enforcement does in terms of dialing down on what people are, I mean, there's some really funny ones out there that people get back. I can't remember what somebody was telling me they got back, and I just was laughing. I think they said they sent something of their dog, and it came back that they were a Swedish Italian or something, and I was just cracking up that the 23andMe didn't even know that it was an animal. But nevertheless, the point is they do very little testing. It's $100 or so that you pay. It used to be $100. I've never done it, but I know it used to. I saw advertising. Maybe it's up more than that. But you can't pay for all these millions of profiles to go in. Imagine every day. There's no way. Your scientists don't have time to look. They're just going to look at the very beginning markers to say they know. And I think they're very, usually probably very off. It's probably better to just do your family tree. Nevertheless, I think law enforcement would know whether they're looking at somebody Hispanic and whether they're not. And I think that is part of the reason they decided to put these billboards in high concentration Mexican, American, and Mexican migrant locations. So anyway, that's what I believe. We don't have a profile, but do they have at least that, the sex and the ethnicity? I'm thinking they do. I want to talk about something that I kind of vaguely touched upon, but I think it's important that I really bring this home. And that is that Sheriff Nanos has repeatedly, including the March 2nd interview, which to me is the most revealing of his interviews of late, because he gives us the motive, because he says we already had the motive. It's nothing has changed. It's basically the motive they had from the beginning. Well, that's an epiphany right there, because now he's telling us since the beginning, remember, it's been an abduction. It's been a abduction for ransom type situation. So he gives us a light that is what he believes. Again, I know many people don't believe Sheriff Nanos. What's that song? I don't want to sing, but you know you're lying if your lips are moving. I'm the worst singer. Sorry, I'll spare you all. I'm in such a festive mood today, though, with St. Patty's Day. Anyway, I know a lot of people feel that about Sheriff Nanos, but I go back to, what does Sheriff Nanos know? He knows more than anyone other than FBI agents and the detectives. No one knows squat about this investigation except him. So we got to go with him. We've got to go with him, no matter what fumbles he may have made in his messaging, no matter other issues that we've seen come up. When he writes something down, I pay big attention to it, because I know the Bureau in a joint case is not going to let him release something big without their blessing, without them comporting with that big message. And he sent out a lot of big messages. He sent out a message clearing the family. We all know about that. And he sent out a message which goes back to, my belief that this is really important. He sent out a message. Let me see what else I can take down so I can get this one up. He sent out a message about the photos. Again, these are the photos I'm talking about the photo with nothing on for Porch Guy, meaning no backpack and no holster. And then he talks about, and then there's this photo, right? That source information says it's 2 days. Well, Sheriff Nanos disagrees with that. Sheriff Nanos says that that's speculation. And he specifically says there's no timestamps and there's no video stamps. I'm going to find this where he says this. And it's important because other than that, it's speculation. Now, I understand if you look, it's ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, News Nation. And of course, I ended with the best, News Nation. They have all said there's the same source reporting. I just never know what to believe when it comes to sources, because with Chief Nanos, I at least know he's in the know. When it comes to a source, this could literally be, for instance, nothing against him, but the retired former Pima County Sheriff Office that's out of the loop that has a friend that might be saying something. So we just don't know. And I don't have that saying. I don't have what he wrote in writing. I thought I had it right here. But what he wrote, what Sheriff Nanos wrote, is that they don't have the timestamps, and anybody saying these are different days, that's conjecture. So wait a minute. I think I have it right here. Here it is. I thought I had this. So it's something for you to consider. I don't think the FBI would allow this as a joint investigation to be released if that wasn't something that they concurred with. So he set this out right after all of this conjecture was going on about 2 different days. Is it 2 different days? I'm not putting myself out there and saying that. I'm saying I think it's possible. It's possible. But it also could be that he came up onto that porch area. I think this is the one. No, this is the actual day. Let me go back and find the other one right here. And he goes up, takes a look, goes back, gets kitted out. In other words, the backpack, everything he needs, his gun, and then he comes back. It's possible. The other possibility is that there's 2 bad guys, and the other possibility is that it's 2 different days. So I don't know. I'm not convinced one way or the other. A lot of people think that they have the timestamps. There's no doubt that there is a school of thought that they have them. But the reason that I find it interesting that they're very strongly saying they don't is because they don't. And that's because of how they would have been gleaned from the footage. Remember, this is not cloud footage. This is not footage from any sort of SIM card. This is footage of where Google and the FBI went back, and I could just picture these gigantic, computer storage type situations that they're peeling back the layers of millions and millions and millions of images back to this day. So this would have been started on likely day 4 after she was abducted, because the FBI wasn't really involved until day 3. So by day 3, they were probably ramping up, figuring out their investigative attack. And by day 4, this was one of the biggest things is, can we get this camera footage? Remember, Nanos said they could not because Nanos could not. But that didn't mean that the FBI combined with Google couldn't get it. And they did get it. They got great footage. But I don't know if, and I'm going to find out, actually, I'm going to make a call. I'm going to see if this person knows, and if they do, if they'll share with me what the situation is regarding if you get an image, do you necessarily, when you peel it back in this way, do you necessarily get the timestamps? Or is that sort of can be separate from the image? In other words, the imagery is what the camera took, but the timestamps, that has nothing to do with the camera. That is what's programmed to stamp based on other, the other part of the system. That's what makes sense to me, because, for instance, your cam or your timestamps can get off in things for whatever reason, but your images don't, right? Your image is what the camera sees. The timestamp is what the computer program is saying to stamp on that. So really, Nanos' statement, which again, when I see it in writing, I pay attention. And we should pay attention, because remember his other in writing, the family's not involved. It's not involved. I think finally some people are coming around, not everyone, to that. And, I'm not the hall monitor. I'm just trying to put information out there that's accurate as opposed to conjecture and garbage. I want to talk about, though, the fact that when Sheriff Nanos has spoken, and this is something that's really been bothering me. He has said, when he speaks, he refers to the perpetrators as the man, he, him, when he was discussing the direction he went. And essentially, everything he says is singular. Not them, not they, not the perpetrators. It's always singular in nature. And on the second is when I really, really noticed it more than other times, because other times I thought, well, of course he's talking singular because he's talking about porch guy. And we only see one guy there. We don't see anybody else there. So we know this door wasn't breached. It's not broken. We know he tries the knob because we can see that. He sort of knocks right here. That's where he's kind of like knocking or making a movement like this. He goes, gets the shovel, but he reaches down with his left hand as if to try the knob. So my belief, based on that, based on it seems like his mission on that porch isn't entry. His mission is to get rid of that camera. And we know that there was no forced entry on the front. Because we could see it with our eyes. The sheriff's office, no one has said whether there was forced entry or not forced entry. That's one thing they're keeping close to the vest. But when I saw the locksmiths go to the back of the house and do some repairs and seeming updates, I don't want to say repairs. They did work on that back door. And I really think that that's where entry was made, and that perhaps somebody was in here, so he's getting their attention, trying the door because they're supposed to let him in, gets the bushes. Again, I don't 100% know. I don't know if he's waving those bushes around. I really don't understand that. And then he gets to work on taking down that camera so that they can take Nancy Guthrie to the closest point of being able to put her in the car, which is right out in front. This circle drive is right out in front of this area. So, that's the situation there. So I wanted to bring up that to everybody, how Sheriff Nanos at least keeps saying, the him, instead of them. So everything's singular. So it's, really has me wondering if this is the lone perpetrator, which I just have a very hard time believing based on my experience in these cases. In cases like that, you just don't have a lone guy that would normally be doing anything like this. Last but not least, and then I'm going to take a few questions. And again, thank you, Karen. Last but not least, I really want to talk about this situation that occurred in Scottsdale. And I'm kind of irritated because people are saying that I'm saying I'm convinced. They didn't even interview me, a lot of these articles. Newsweek, those are my true comments in Newsweek. The Daily Mail, again, there's one writer that particularly, we had a lot of conversations. He did a lot of articles in Idaho, that he called me about. But there's so many articles out there that are sort of quoting me and saying that I'm convinced. I want to make this clear. I'm not convinced. The only thing I'm convinced of in terms of the Scottsdale kidnapping for cryptocurrency that was right in the same time frame, just right before. The only thing I'm trying to say is that this is going to be investigated. I'm 100% sure of that. I'm 100% sure that the FBI is trying to discern whether these two knucklehead teenagers who drove 6.5 hours from California, by the way, where the billboards are, all the way over to Scottsdale, an hour and a half north of where approximately and I need to double check that. I think it's about an hour and a half north of where Nancy Guthrie lived, and entered a house of individuals in this neighborhood. This is the vehicle they used. They were given $1,000 by the people that they were working for. This is just the neighborhood, but it was a nice neighborhood in Scottsdale. Scottsdale is a very pricey neighborhood, and reconned through the individuals on that they were communicating on the Signal app and went to this house. They entered with disguises, but not disguises like porch guy, but rather delivery disguises, like an Amazon outfit. I don't know if it was Amazon, but a delivery outfit that they both purchased. So they would dress alike. Again, the dressing alike thing. And they entered the home. They brutally not only beat, but tied up the individuals before their son, I think, who was actually in the house, likely hiding, was able to call 911. There was a car chase, I understand, or a chase, I should say, not a car chase. I know for sure there was a chase, and they were apprehended, these knuckleheads. And again, the individuals who were supposedly driving this train were Red and 8, right? That was their names on the Signal app, and somehow sent them the money. This should be easily traceable. The money, Signal, you can do court documents and get a lot of Signal information, even though it's supposed to be more crypto and more private. Nevertheless, I'm watching this one. I 100% know the FBI is going to be trying to figure out who did this, because this is why when you statistically speak about random kidnaps, in other words, these two knuckleheads, they say they didn't even know each other, by the way. So I'm wondering, what dark web are they on, where it's something like, want to make a lot of money? Want to do a kidnapping? All this can be yours, because that's what I'm picturing, something that brought them together in this way. And they came together. That's what the reporting is. They didn't know each other except for through this process of making a decision to get together, to get $1,000, to get uniforms, to get whatever else they needed, the ropes and things to tie up, and to go and break into a house. And again, they did not do this in a smart way at all. They're not like Porch Guy. I'm not trying to make that sort of analogy or inference. What my inference is who's on the back end of this? Who is on the back end of the Signal app? Who's 8? Who is Red? Who is directing them? How were they purportedly extorted at one point? Where did the $1,000 come from? Why did this happen just an hour and a half north? I think estimated, if somebody knows the exact distance between Nancy Guthrie's house and Scottsdale, but I believe it's like an hour and a half north. There's just too much there. So I'm 100% sure the Bureau will look at that. Am I 100% sure that there's some connection? No. But I find it very interesting. It just makes me wonder when you look at, and I brought this up too, the Chilean burglary ring that was focusing on, Mahomes and Kelsey and all these other high dollar sports figures from throughout the United States. And the FBI arrested, I believe, 7 of them, maybe got 10, but I think 7. And they were literally with high level of intelligence, meaning intelligence that they gleaned from where the individuals would be, where they wouldn't be, and then the lack of security at the homes of these individuals, right? Alarms not set, doors open, other information that was able to be gleaned. They would break into these houses, and they were super at it, and stole a lot, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from all of these athletes. And I believe how they got down to solving the case, the FBI, was through the fencing part of it. That's typically the problem, right? They sooner or later you're like, geez, how do I have Kelsey's Super Bowl shirt, right? That when it's fenced all the way down and you work your way backwards. But Nevertheless, these rings are becoming more sophisticated and more common. And all I'm saying is, could this have been part of something like that? Where the people behind Signal, are they behind others? Are they behind any other, kidnappings that went in or that were ordered or orchestrated? It's just weird to me that within the same time frame, not very far from one another, in similar fashion, meaning wanting cryptocurrency from rich people, that's a MO that's similar. What's not similar at all is the sophistication or lack thereof, right? Two knuckleheads that want to get their hands on some cheap money, driving around in broad daylight, easily detectable on Ring cameras, just total knuckleheads, breaking in and brutalizing the people, not checking to see if other people were in the house. I mean, these knuckleheads are not at all at the caliber of a porch guy. But I just want to know who's behind. I want to know who's behind the Signal app and the $1,000. I want to know who orchestrated it. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up again because I wanted to make it clear, even though some articles are saying that I'm convinced that whoever is behind the Signal app is behind this. No, I'm not convinced of that. I'm convinced the FBI needs to check it out. And I'm convinced the FBI will check it out. The location, the proximity. And when I saw those signs now in California, right here, this one specifically is in California. Yeah, it has to be looked into. All right. I think that's it. I wanted to let you guys know again that we are having a huge, I'm not going to call it a raffle. We're going to call it a giveaway because it's not a raffle. You don't pay money for it or anything like that. But for those of you who have the $3.99 membership, I know $3.99, that's less than a Starbucks cup of coffee. But for those of you who have that monthly membership, I first want to say I really appreciate it. And I'm trying to do a lot more for members, some members only videos that no one else can see, and then members at the beginning, and then we'll release it later, things like that. So in any event, I hope that some of you become members. And one of the things we're doing is I'm putting together just this little package of some FBI stuff. And that FBI stuff, I'm going to figure out, I'm hoping one of my mods will help me, how to randomly search and pick one of the $3.99 memberships, and that person is going to receive it. So that'll be really cool, I think, to do. And just a way to give back, really trying to find a way to give back to those members. Because I really do appreciate y'all, and something unique that I don't think any other channel would be doing. So would love that. Let's see. Is it true that 10 p.m. meds were not taken? Okay, so there's what I'm noticing out there, and I'm going to do, I just haven't had time to do it. I still have this report I have got to get done and another one due. So I'm on top of that. That's what I'm doing day in and day out. But I'm going to put together a spreadsheet and then I'll post it. And that spreadsheet is literally going to be things we know and how in the source. So this is what we know, like porch guy is male. And then I'm going to put the source. Porch guy is 5'9" to 5'10". This is the source. This was the date of the abduction, whatever it might be. And then I'm going to do in another column things we know or things that are out there from source information. When a reporter says, my source told me, or ABC says, according to sources, those types of things. And believe me, there are a lot of reporters that do have good sources. It's not about the source. It's not about the reporter. I want to make that so clear. It's about the person that's giving them the information. that I believe in most instances, and Dale Lundgren, all of us in law enforcement, because we know it's third string. There is no one that was inside of this investigation, in my belief, that has ever given any information. It's from somebody else, removed. So I'm very leery of sources. I'm very leery of them, because I'll tell you, the sources that I have, if you want to call them that, I don't call them sources, I call them friends, family. The people that I have that are privy to the information, and in the instances where I might know information, if I can't independently figure out how to tell you all separately about that information, I'm not going to tell it, because I would never, well, first of all, I would never cite a source like that. Now, I do all the time say, sources say, meaning not my source, but sources of somebody else say, XYZ. And I want to thank you so much. Thank you, Olivia. And thank you, Marianne. Wait a minute, Marianne? I thought Marianne had been a member forever. Nevertheless, thank you, Marianne. And so I just want to say again, and I know it's reiterating it, but with these sources, you have to be careful. So my spreadsheet will also have what we know from sources. Like, one of the main things we know is that this day, sources say, is different than this day. So we'll put it up for you guys to consider. Source information. Just like in the FBI, we have to have sources. We have these categories that we're judged in, our investigative categories. And another one is intelligence. And then if you say you're on the SWAT team, then you're judged in that category too, which goes to your overall evaluation. But we had to maintain, I know I've talked about this, I'll just touch on this. We had to maintain sources, and we're judged on those sources. And this can be something that could deep six a lot of people. You had some of the best case agents out there, but man, they were just terrible at getting sources, handling sources, getting sources that could provide information that helped with a case and that was credible. You have to put that all together. So not only do you have to vet these guys, but then you have to figure out whether it's credible or not. And anytime you're getting source information, you're looking at it with a side eye, right? Like, I have to vet a source way different than I vet somebody in law enforcement telling me, or, other sources of information we get. Sources that, like, as an example, a wiretap or consensual monitoring or something like that is very tangible. I'm going to look at that. That is demonstrative. That is absolute information. But when my sources tell me, even the best of the best of the best sources I had, I still wanted to do what I could to corroborate. And I shouldn't say that, because, some sources I had for years. One source I had for probably 3 years, and another white collar source I had that is very high up, an attorney, and a very, very credible source. So I guess I shouldn't say that. I've had some excellent sources that I really did trust. But the new ones that come in, for instance, if somebody's new on this case and all of a sudden they have this great source reporting, great source, how can you get that overnight? What law enforcement officer or agent is going to want to do that? Is going to want to give information about an investigation that could ruin the chances of catching Porch Guy, that can ruin justice for Nancy Guthrie? I have zero respect for anyone in law enforcement that gives information up surreptitiously, on the sly, for money or for whatever else they're motivated from. All right, guys, I'll leave it there, other than I want to look and see if there's any interesting questions up here. I agree with Peak 120. Peak 120 says, or Piquet 120 says, he thinks, or this person, Piquet 120, thinks that porch guy is younger. And again, this is our beliefs, right? So when I look at this picture, I don't see the wrinkles. I don't see, and the black and whites are great because you can kind of make some of that stuff out. I think these look like young eyes to me, a young face, what we can see, manicured brow, manicured mustache, soft lips. I don't think this is some sort of, people are saying that they think, it's like when you put the pantyhose over a face or some mask under the mask. I really don't, that is not what I see here. That's my belief. I think his eyes are well exposed. I see the eye reflection of the light there. I think this is him. I think those are the brows. And I think he is younger. When we say younger, I just mean, younger than 40-ish, 20s, 30s. Hispanic people, though, tend to very much age better. People with lots of melanin in their skin age a little bit softer than people who don't have melanin in their skin, and that tend to be very, very fair because that sun just beats up their faces more oftentimes than people who are Hispanic, people who are Black, people who have skin of color. Their faces take it better. I tell you, when I was doing surveillance, so something we had to do all the time, as you can imagine, you're out on surveillance, you're surveilling people that you don't know, they're coming in and out of your view, that are at key locations. You have to get pretty good at being able to say, this person is so tall, they weigh so much, they are, light skin, dark skin, they're Black, you believe they're Hispanic. You write that down, but you have to be very careful, because then when it comes time to litigate, if you have said that the person that ends up being the subject, you've said that they're 5'10" and they end up being 6'3", and you've said that they're Hispanic and they end up being Irish, and you say, that they weigh 175 and they weigh 225, that can be really bad and embarrassing on the stand. But you get pretty good at it. You get pretty good at, understanding the height of the door and understanding the height of a car, and looking at what's in the background and getting a feel for people's weights and heights and ethnicities. And I tell you, and ages. Obviously, always we do kind of a range like I'm doing here. I think this guy is somewhere between mid 20s and no more than young 40s. That's what I'm going to say. That's my range right now from what I can see. But you get pretty good at it. But I tell you what, when I was surveilling somebody that had skin of color, Hispanic or Black, when I'm saying the range of age, I'm always going to make it a little bit more. In other words, because they look so much younger than their actual age, you have to kind of adjust for that. And I would always adjust for that because I understand that people with skin of color age better. I don't want to say better. They don't have the aged look as soon. And so that was something on surveillance in particular when you're giving a discussion of range, because now, of course, you're going to be comparing what those descriptions are with subjects that you might have either on file or that you're looking at that have conducted, like particularly in gangs that you've identified from gangs, and you're trying to compare. And so you're using those types of comparisons based on what you see on surveillance. So it's very critical and very important, both for the adjudication part to be pretty right, and then secondarily for being able to identify a possible known suspect or a possible known bad guy, if you will, with your suspect. So anyway, I see this guy for those. This is just my opinion. This guy is not an older guy. 50s, 60s, late 40s. This guy is a more younger person. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to see this. Oh, this is interesting. So PK 120 that I was just talking about, they mentioned that they are autistic. They have autism, and so they don't often look at faces. That is so interesting. And another thing that I've pointed out from the beginning, do you see how the right eye fades in? And I bring that up because I have that same problem. If you've followed me for a long time, or if you see me on News Nation, or if you know me personally, and I know there's a lot of people now in chat that actually know me. I was just talking to somebody yesterday that I've been friends with. We've been friends with our whole family for, 20 plus years, 20 years around. And he said, "Oh, did you know my wife is following you?" And I was shocked. I said, "Oh, that's so great." So anyway, if you're out there and know me, you know that I have an eye. I don't know if you call it a lazy eye. I don't know what it is. It's always been this way, so it's not age. It just fades in sometimes. I know you guys are all going to be watching for that now, because a lot of people don't notice that about me, but people who know me well, they know I have kind of like this guy. This is big to me. This is one of the biggest things, because whoever really knows this person knows they wear a ring on that hand, knows that they wear their mustache this way, knows that they have these eyebrows, knows this general age range, knows how they prefer to dress. They know all of this. I still think that backpack came from a Walmart. I know they're saying a thrift store. Listen, this backpack is the cheapest backpack about you can get. It's like $10, $11. And you're going to wear it out and a thrift store is going to sell it? Maybe. It's possible. I know they said they're looking into that. It's definitely not going to be resold on any website, because you wouldn't be able to make any money off of eBay selling a $10 backpack. By the time you spend the $5 to mail it, you've already eaten up what little profit you have, which is basically going to be zero between what eBay is going to get and what you're going to get. So I really think, and again, this could be something that he bought 5 years ago. I mean, it's hard what law enforcement has to do with these clues. It's really hard, even though that backpack to me is a very good lead. It's still going to be hard to crack that lead. And I also wanted to comment about the best way that this is going to be solved. I know a lot of people say the DNA. I think the DNA could be extremely important. I really want them to follow what CeCe Moore said. Go back, people. Go back and get more. There has to be more there, because this guy had this light in his mouth and he had to take it out of his mouth. And that would mean he would get saliva on his hands. And that means whatever he touched, he could transfer that saliva onto something. Just even the removal of that light and the spit that would fly. I think they need to go back too. And I say that because as far as we know, we only have one example. But Porch Guy, somebody who knows Porch Guy needs to step forward. Everyone, I want to thank you for being here again. I'll see you probably earlier in the morning tomorrow, probably around 8. I am flying out again. So I'll let everybody know the time frame of that to make sure. I might be doing another one from the airport. It was so funny. I did a live from the airport, and I found this nice quiet spot in the back of this little restaurant, and everything was going great, and the background was actually amazing. And then all of a sudden they turned up the music right in the middle of my live, and somebody was so funny. They said, "Are you at a disco? What is going on, Jen?" And I thought that was so funny. They were obviously kidding around. But I want to thank everybody again for being here. Thank you to all the new members. I really, really appreciate it. And to all of you, may justice be served. And I'm going to put her back up here for Nancy Guthrie and for the Guthrie family. and for everyone else who's missing.